Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's video. Today, I have a very special build that I've been working on. Now, it's the last couple of days, I did publish my Mace Whirlwind Barb, and I'm not going to lie, guys, I threw all that away and just worked up a completely new build because this one is absolutely cooked. And this is my dual wield Whirlwind Barbarian with Ramaladni's Magnum Opus. Now, I know that dual wield seems a little weird. Typically, you're running your big two hands, so you could do a lot of damage. But this one weapon, in my opinion, is so good that if you can get a good roll on it, I think this might just be the absolute best Whirlwind Barb in the entire game, when fully optimized. Um, and I'm not gonna lie, just playing it for now, it has the best quality of life. It feels absolutely great. It is the true Whirlwind dream of you click Whirlwind and then you just spin for the entire dungeon. It feels so damn good. Nothing has even felt nearly as close as how good this build plays. So why is Ramaladni's so damn good? Okay, because typically, you want your two-hander, right? The reason why is mainly for this, like the unique power skills using this weapon deal zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.3, and we do have a perfect roll here per point of fury that you have, but you lose 2 fury every second. Now with Whirlwind, chewing up like 50 plus fury per second, the 2 fury is kind of negligible. We really don't care about it, but having an ancestral Ramaladni's with the zero point 0.3 makes this such a good weapon. Um, and if I actually bring up, like, I have a quick calculator here, right? Right now I have right now I have 165 fury. So if I have my calculator, 165 times zero point 0.3, that means that I have a 50% damage boost when I'm at max fury. I mean, that's just crazy. That's insane. 50% more damage. There's no legendary that even comes close. That's crazy. That's so much damage. And keep in mind that this only goes higher as you get more and more max fury, which you'll probably, when we talk about gearing, you'll see that max fury is going to be like the most important stat in the game. So before I actually go ahead and break it down, I wanted to just show you just how well this game or this build plays. We start off, we press all of our shouts, and then as soon as I see something, I'm going to pop Berserker, and then I'm just going to go. And you're going to see everything dies. I don't even have to stop. I am just moving. I just get to move. If I get CC'd, that's like literally the only way I can get stopped, or if I'm trying to pick up loot. But for the most part, we just get to keep moving. We get to keep spinning. Like, to me, this is like almost like Diablo 3 levels of insanity, where you just get to move so fast. I'm almost movement speed capped with this build. I get complete shout cooldowns almost all the time. And I don't even have to use my basic skill. I actually replace my basic skill with Iron Skin, so I just have more survivability. And I can just basically spam my buttons. I don't have to ever stop. Things die. They die so fast. It feels great. Again, I don't want to do the entire dungeon, but you guys can see even elites, they die in like 1 or 2 hits. Um, it's just great. Keep going here. All right, and I think that should be good. We can go ahead and just wrap up some of these mobs here, and I'll go over the build in just a second. Okay, very good. Okay, so a lot of fun. It feels great. There's not really like a lot of downtime or stopping. One of the biggest problems that I had when I played the Mace Whirlwind Barb is sometimes I felt a little clunky and I felt like I would just get stuck. Never had that problem here, because swords are very fast. When you're dual wielding swords, they're way faster than a two-handed mace, and on top of that, we're also going to be running a lot of attack speed, and that's going to make you just basically tick the mobs a lot faster. So if we have a slow thing that's going to go like hit, hit, this one's like hit. Feels great. So let's actually go ahead. We're going to do the full run through of everything, and you're going to see just how crazy this build gets. A lot of this, I think, is pretty optimized. However, I think the Paragon board could definitely see some more, some more stuff. So over here, we just need 2 points. Basically, we're not even running a basic skill. It's okay if you want to run the basic skill, but I don't even need to. I just go 2 points in lunging strike. Again, we're not using a basic skill, so don't even worry about it. You can use one though. So now here we go Whirlwind for 5 points in Whirlwind, Enhanced Whirlwind, and then we're actually going to go Furious Whirlwind. The reason why is because we do need some way of applying a bleed, and we're going to be using a slashing weapon. That's our sword. So we are going to be able to apply a bleed. Doesn't actually matter how big the bleed is. It's not really an important part of our damage, but the important thing is that we always have things bleeding for a number of effects later down the road. Now, pressure point, this one's really good in this build. In fact, this is why swords is very strong, because we're actually going to be attacking a lot faster, which means that we're going to be getting more lucky hit procs, which means that we can actually make things vulnerable a lot faster. On top of that, we also run a lot of lucky hit chance in this build. So this pressure point is such an important thing because it's going to be proccing very, very frequently, even on top of exploit giving you the free 3 seconds, which we'll get into later. Now, over here, you guys can see a lot of defensive skills, okay? We got Rallying Cry maxed with Enhanced Rallying Cry and Tactical Rallying Cry. We go for Challenging Shout maxed with Enhanced and Tactical Challenging Shout, of course. And what I actually do is that if you're not relying on your basic skills, if your Fury is completely figured out, which it's pretty easy to with this build, you can actually go for 1 point in Iron Skin and then get Enhanced Iron Skin. I like this one. I haven't really played around with these last ones instead. I don't think they're quite worth it, but I like the extra 16%. And just having the 1 point, having these 2 points in Iron Skin makes it like a free button you can click. I might also just get rid of this and put the 2 points somewhere else, but this one's really, like, I think Iron Skin's worth it for these 2 points. Now over here, we are going to still get Warcry, of course. We run our triple shouts. We get Enhanced and Power Warcry for the extra damage bonus. Now this is really important. Booming Voice is, of course, mandatory for the extra shout duration, and I actually really like going for Guttural Yell. It gives us a little bit more damage reduction because this build can be a little squishy with, you know, like Challenging Shout and basically Guttural Yell are like our main damage reduction. I also, of course, get 3 out of 3 swiftness because I'm trying to power farm. And then I also go for 1 out of 3 in damage reduction while berserking and more fury generation while berserking. This build does berserk pretty frequently, if not always. So having this extra is just free berserking generation. Now, over here, Pit Fighter, 9% increased damage, which is great. And remember how I said No Mercy was really good? Yeah, it is very, very good. We get 3 points in it, and then I also get 3 points from my necklace. So I actually have an 18% increased crit strike chance against slowed enemies or any CC'd enemies. Everything is going to be slowed because of Hamstring. Your bleeding effects slow enemies. So again, this is how it all combos together, the Hamstring package. Whirlwind applies the bleed. Hamstring slows everything that is hit by my Whirlwind, and now I have an 18% crit chance on top of all the other slew of modifiers against slowed, bleeding, all that stuff. So yeah, this is insane. 3 points on your necklace also helps a lot, but we'll get into that later. And then finally, in this last part, we go 3 out of 3 for Max Fury. Again, you do more damage based on how much Fury you have. So the higher Max Fury, the better. And then we get 3 points in Wrath of the Berserker because, you know, it's just better. And we don't need any of the heavy-handed or wallop or concussion because we're going to be running 2 swords. We're not using a 2-handed. And over in key passive, honestly, you get so much rage with this build that Unbridled Rage is just the best choice by far. However, if you are very much struggling with your rage generation, you can also go unconstrained until you figure out your rage stuff. But I felt like I was getting an unbelievable amount of rage, more than I ever did with swords or with maces. So this made it very, very easy for me to switch to Unbridled Rage. It was not even a question. Now there are a couple of choices that I wanted to bring up, and that's getting 1 point in Thick Skin and then getting 3 points in Counter Offensive. The reason why I don't do this is because I'm actually running a build that doesn't use any Fortify. However, if you are using, the Fortify legendary, or if on your Paragon board you're getting Fortify there, I actually think that this one is really good because it's extra 12% damage. So you may want to consider this. And if you're struggling with survivability, I would probably, just take points out of like. You might want to take points out of like swiftness, even like three out of challenging shout. That might be okay. You might want to take points here out of your iron skin or something if you're not using that, and then just put it into thick skin and counter offensive because that does help a lot. Finally, if you want to play around, I haven't played around with this yet, but I've also considered possibly going for a leap instead of iron skin. But I'm not sure about that. Yeah, that's just something I've been kind of thinking about in the back of my mind. Okay, let's go through the character. Real quick, I want to talk about expertise, okay? Originally, I was using two-handed axes. What does two-handed axe do? It does 15... Wait a minute. Oh, yeah, 15% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. This one does 15% increased crit strike damage to stunned and vulnerable enemies while berserking. So both of these are pretty good. I would probably go for two-handed axes. I was playing around a little bit with two-handed maces as well. Yeah, but as far as expertise goes, I would pretty much just take whichever one's lower. So in this case, my vulnerable's a little lower, so I would go for two-handed axes. Now, the reason why swords are really good is because we're going to be naturally benefiting from having two one-handed swords. I do like running two one-handed swords. Lucky hit gives us a 10% chance to gain 5 fury, and that's going to be doubled. So we actually have a 20% chance every time we hit a crowd controlled enemy, which is basically always. So that's a lot of fury that we're getting through our lucky hit. And then also, killing a crowd control enemy grants you 15% attack speed, which is going to be doubled. So we're getting 30% attack speed. Again, attack speed is really good because you're getting more chances of your lucky hit. The faster you attack, the more lucky hit chance you're going to be able to, possibly get. Okay, let's talk about our gear and our legendaries. We got a lot, and I'm not gonna lie, a lot of this gear is very, very good. Over here in our helmet, oh, real quick, one thing I wanted to talk about is the one stat that you really want to be thinking about in this build is going to be max fury. You can get max fury from your helmet and your rings. I haven't quite been able to do that yet, but you can see here that I'm working like this, for example, is a helmet I would really like to get because it has max fury and cooldown reduction. This one also, this ring has max fury, but it's a sacred. So I'm playing around with that. But yeah, max fury, a very, very good stat. Okay, so let's talk about our helmet. I like to put Grasping Whirlwind on helmet because I still think Grasping Whirlwind it's just a nice, good quality of life feature, and it just makes it feel a lot better. As far as stats go, the most important thing is going to be life and cooldown reduction, and then max fury. So this one again, it's got cooldown reduction, it's got max life, and it's got max fury. If I had a Grasping Whirlwind, I would be putting it into this helmet and using this. So just keep in mind that's what you're looking for. Over in your chest, I think you have to use Rage of Haragath with this build. I think you just have to. Um, and it's definitely worth it as well. The key thing is that having that extra chance to reduce your cooldowns. So over here, 36% chance lucky hit to reduce your cooldowns whenever you inflict bleeding on elites. This means that every time you hit elites, you're going to massively reduce the cooldown of Rallying Cry, War Cry, Challenging Shout, and also Iron Skin. So you're actually getting a lot of value out of Rage of Haragath. Now, the one thing to think about Rage of Haragath is that I've heard that it does not really work properly with some bleeds. So, most importantly, if you use two-hand sword expertise, this does not work with Rage of Haragath, and also Berserk Ripping does not work with Rage of Haragath. So, the best way that you can apply it is with the Whirlwind ability, this one right here. So this will work. Furious Whirlwind, it will work to apply bleeds. So again, Rage of Haragath's very good. Also, the stats aren't that bad. You do have damage reduction from bleeding, and you also get crit chance against elites, which is very good as well. Now let's talk about our gloves. Initially, I was running these Gores, right? But I actually don't think Gores is that good for this build. The thing is that when I start spinning, I never want to stop spinning, okay? And Gores makes you stop spinning, okay? I want to just keep going. I just want to keep moving. I don't want to stop. I don't want to have to rechannel. So I switched these gloves instead and got these guys. The reason why I like these is because it's got 4 rank of Whirlwind, which is fantastic. It's got a lot of lucky hit chance. I do think you should try to get some lucky hit chance on your gloves and possibly also on your rings. It also has a 5% chance to heal, 1200 life. This is a really good roll. It's just we're going to be lucky hitting a lot, so this gives me a lot more survivability and just kind of natural healing. And then I'm also getting 8% crit chance. This is really, really good gloves. I think they're very, very good. I think the only thing that I would possibly want to switch is possibly instead of 5% chance to heal life, I would maybe want 5% chance to get resources. But to me, that's like a really minor thing. And then I throw Edgemasters on here just for some more damage as well, because I'm really trying to just optimize my damage. Over on my pants, again, I'm just running huge damage reduction pants. I have damage reduction from distant enemies, damage reduction from bleeding, and I have total armor. So these are just super tanky pants. And I actually went ahead and did disobedience, which gives me armor. Everything's going to be bleeding, and bleeds are very, very good at applying disobedience stacks, so you get a ton of armor. You do want to be tanky because obviously you don't want to be getting one shot or dying. using this build. You can also run something like Temerity if you wanted to. Temerity gives you barriers every time you heal, and you are overhealing a lot. So I think Temerity is an option, but then you're going to want to probably change your build a little bit around so you have, you know, you're getting this armor somewhere else, maybe like in your necklace or something. Over on the boots, again, these boots are super sick. I'm using the same boots as before. It's got Fury cost reduction, it's got Berserking duration, it's got movement speed after killing an elite, and it's got movement speed. And I'm also using the Ghostwalker legendary, which gives me movement speed whenever I'm unstoppable. Rallying Cry gives me unstoppable, and we have nearly perfect uptime on this. So that means we have almost perfect uptime on this legendary movement speed. I'm being very, very greedy with movement speed in this build because I'm trying to basically speed farm all these dungeons. I really want to just try to push for level 100 soon and just kind of like grind my way. And this is kind of why it's a very greedy offensive build. Okay, let's talk about weapons. So over here with your two-hander, remember, you're only using these swords. So your two-handers are just stat sticks. The DPS does not matter. What are you looking for? You're looking for vulnerable damage, crit damage, strength, and all stats. This thing has vulnerable damage, it's got strength, it's got all stats, it's missing crit damage. And I really think that getting all four of those on your weapons is actually really important because Ramaladni's has its predetermined rolls. So you really want to be trying to make sure you're getting crit and vulnerable damage from your weapons, your other three weapons. And then of course we're gonna be using Dire Whirlwind here so that we can get the increased crit chance, which is awesome. You're channeling almost all the time, so you're always going to have this extra 48% crit chance, and it's just going to make your whirlwind do so much damage, especially if you can get a perfect roll on this. Over here with Ramaladni's, we kind of talked about it already, but again, try to get high DPS on ancestral Ramaladni's, especially one that has a good roll of the increased damage per fury. The other rolls aren't as important. Damage with dual wield, damage to close, physical damage, those aren't that important. Just try to focus on getting a perfect roll of that. The lucky hit one is also, again, it's a very, very good roll. I would love if it was 20%, but it is what it is, right? I can't complain for having an ancestral. And again, DPS does matter for your dual wield. So in your offhand, I would also recommend using a high DPS sword. This one's 813 item power. We still got a lot to go with this one, but it does have crit dam, it does have vulnerable damage, and it's also got damage to close and damage to slowed. I would much prefer if that was strength and all stats, but DPS is kind of king here. So, we want to make sure we have a high DPS dual wield setup. For the legendary here, I'm not 100% sure where I'll end up, but I've really liked going with accelerating. Crit strikes increase your attack speed by, up to 25% for 5 seconds. This just means, and because you're always critting, this basically just means you have 25% increased attack speed. I'm not 100% sure where I'm at with attack speed right now, but I just feel like attacking faster gives you more lucky hit procs, gives you more chance to apply vulnerable. It just works. I honestly think it works a lot better in this build than I expected. So right now I'm using this. If I had something like Temerity, for example, and I was getting barriers, I would maybe consider going for Conceited instead to just get the extra damage while you have a barrier. But to me, just having like 25% increased attack speed at all times with basically no condition because we're always critting, this is just like, it feels so good for the build. There's no condition here. Finally, on our two-hander, again, DPS doesn't matter here. We're just looking for these perfect stats. We got crit damage, vulnerable damage, strength, all stats. This is a beautiful two-hander. Now for the legendary power, we are using Limitless Rage. As usual, this isn't a perfect roll because I had to switch it. So we're only getting up to 45% damage instead of the max 60. But because you're going to be at max fury so much, Limitless Rage is just a no-brainer. It's just increasing your damage of your whirlwind. It's great. So let's go through our jewelry. Jewelry is actually super important because you are going to want some pretty insane rolls on this. And you guys will see I did get some pretty crazy stuff. This ring is still a work in progress. It's not great, but your perfect ring is actually going to look like this guy right here. Resource generation, lucky hit chance, crit damage, vulnerable damage. There's only one thing missing, and that's I would probably replace either the crit damage or the vulnerable damage with what is it? Max Fury, right? Remember, more Max Fury gives us more damage on our Ramaladnis, and you can roll Max Fury on your rings. So this looks like a pretty close to perfect ring. However, there is one small optimization, and that's just max fury instead of a little bit more damage. This guy, again, you can see this has so much that it needs work on because the only real good stat here is actually the resource generation. Um, the crit chance actually doesn't matter, and I'll talk about that in just a second. And then damage to slow and damage to close is not as valuable as lucky hit chance. It's not as valuable as crit dam or vuln dam. The reason why crit chance doesn't actually matter is because, well, because we have an insane amount of crit chance. So on base, I have, let's see, 25.6% crit chance. So I'm actually going to bring up my calculator here. 25.6 base crit chance. On top of that, Dire Whirlwind, when fully channeled, is another 48 crit chance. So I have plus 48, which is already 73. Now I have my Rage of Haragath, which is another 11.3 against elites. That's plus 11.3. And over here, remember, I have No Mercy, which is 18% increased crit against slowed enemies. So that's actually plus 18. I have 103% crit chance. So this 3.9 crit chance is actually completely useless. I could get rid of this crit chance and I would still have 99% crit chance. Yeah, that's insane. It is absolutely insane. I'm critting always. It's basically 100% uptime. It's crazy. So yeah, this ring, it's far from perfect. There's a lot more stats you can get. It is very hard to get like a perfect ring with this build, but like you guys can see what the idea is, right? Also, for our legendary powers on these rings, you of course want to go with Bold Chieftains. It's going to reduce your cooldown. The roll doesn't actually matter that much because it's really easy to hit 6 enemies. So the roll of Bold Chieftains doesn't super matter. However, the roll of Echoing Fury is pretty important. Your shout skills generate 4 fury per second. This basically means that the difference between 3 fury per second and 4 fury per second is an extra 3 fury per second because you have 3 shouts going. So I would really recommend trying to get a perfect roll. And when you do get a perfect roll, toss that in like a perfect kitted out ring that you're going to be using for a very long time. So yeah, finally we got our necklace. Man, this necklace is it's so fucking sick. Okay, it's got everything I want. 3 ranks of No Mercy is 9% crit basically at all times. That's sick. 3 ranks of defensive skills is actually represents 9 skill points because I'm getting 3 to Rallying Cry, 3 to Challenging Shout, and 3 to Iron Skin. It's also good because I don't even have to put points into Iron Skin. I can just have it on my bar for free, which is crazy good. Fury cost reduction is just king on amulets. It makes it so much easier for you to keep spinning, and you just have so much resource. You don't have that much fury cost on your stuff. You're spinning forever. You don't have to stop. You don't have to hit with lunging strike. You don't have to wait for your shouts to come on cooldown because they have nearly perfect uptime. You're just always spinning. And then finally, cooldown reduction, absolutely must on the necklace. This isn't a great roll, but again, this is my rerolled stat. So if I have like a couple hundred mil to spend, I'm just going to reroll that till I get like a perfect CDR. And then I'm probably never touching this ring or probably never touching this amulet ever again. It's just too good, honestly. For the amulet power, there's a lot you can do here. You can put Edgemasters here. You can put a defensive here if you want. Something like Disobedience or Numbing Wrath is also good. That gives you Fortify. Personally, though, I'm just being an absolute greedy goblin. I'm just going for Wind Striker so I can get more movement speed and try to hit like movement speed caps. So I'm always moving at like the fastest speed possible, which is it's a really sick build if you're able to do that. Now, ideally, I would probably be putting Ghostwalker in here and then Windstriker there because you want the extra 50% on Ghostwalker. However, I've been playing around with the amulet so much, so I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to land on that. Now, there's one thing I wanted to talk about because there is one legendary that you might have seen, but I haven't seen that many people talk about it, and that's the Melted Heart of Selig. It's got all stats, core skill damage, damage while healthy, and resource regeneration. But more importantly, it also gives you plus 30% maximum resource. Now you might think, holy crap, this is like insane, right? This is going to make this build so much stronger. I actually don't know. I don't actually think it's that strong. And the reason why is because you're giving up a legendary spot on your amulet to run this. So let's say that even if I had like 250 fury, which is possible for sure if you had good rolls on your ring and your amulet or on your helmet. 250, an extra 30% of that is 75. Ramaladni's gives us zero point 0.3 for every point of rage. So we're actually getting 22.5% extra damage because of Ramaladni's. But Edgemaster would be giving us 30%, right? So why would we not just run Edgemaster instead of Melted Heart of Selig? Especially because to run Melted Heart of Selig, you're also giving up all the points of your defensive skills. You're giving up cooldown reduction. You're giving up Fury. You're still getting resource generation, which is good. But you're also giving up 3 points of No Mercy or whatever good passive you get. So I don't think this item is actually that good at all. I don't know. Maybe somebody could figure out some crazy build where it works, but I don't think that this is like the great chase item that enables this build, like other people have said. Okay, finally, let's. There's one more thing we gotta talk about. We gotta talk about our Paragon board. Now, the Paragon board has gone through a couple changes to make it absolutely correct. For the most part, our build starts off very similar to a typical Whirlwind Barb. You path up, you're going to grab Exploit here. By the way, a lot of my stuff now is level 15. If you don't have level 15 glyphs yet, just kind of get a couple bonus points where you can. It might slow down your build a bit, but otherwise, just keep doing your Nightmare Dungeons. Try to get level 15 for the extra range. So we got Exploit in here. This is just a must. It's going to make all enemies vulnerable. Even though we apply vulnerable so fast with our lucky hit, just having vulnerable on that first tick just makes it so that you tick, you have vulnerable, and then like boom, 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 you're just hitting them, and they die so fast. You're not fishing for any proc. Exploit's just great. We grab both of our points here, and we kind of path up. Over in the second tree, I really like to go Marshal again because early on, vulnerable damage is a bit of a problem. So getting Marshal with all of these vulnerable damage nodes just is a ton of damage. I think I counted that with this guy and with Pillage, getting this vulnerable damage here, you get about 85% vulnerable damage with this board, which is a lot. And of course, Marshal, after you cast a shout skill, the cooldown of your other shout skills is reduced. This is really good for just making sure we have nearly infinite uptime on our shouts. Now, you can keep going left after you've got Pillage. You got all these vulnerable damage nodes. And we're going to go for, I believe this tree is, Blood Rage. Blood Rage is really good because, of course, everything's going to be bleeding. So we're going to work our way over to this glyph socket and put Disembowel in, which every time you kill a bleeding enemy, you're going to have a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of your non-ultimate cooldowns, right? Which is all four of these guys. All four of these guys are actually going to be reduced because of Disembowel. That means that even Iron Skin is going to have like a ridiculous uptime. You're going to be able to press this button a lot. So path your way in here. You're going to need willpower, and there is a lot of willpower you can get, especially if you get Disembowel to level 15 and you get this extra range that you can use to pick up like this guy, this guy, this guy. There's a lot of extra willpower that you can get. If you don't have that yet, you can also put Marshal in here because there's a ton of strength that you can get. So you can put Marshal in here and then put Disembowel in here and grab, some willpower nodes. That's also an option. This is just what I found to be a little bit stronger. Once we got all this, we have damage reduction from bleeding enemies. We have damage to bleeding enemies. We're actually going to work our way and quickly grab Blood Rage. Killing a bleeding enemy has a 10% chance to grant Berserking for 5 seconds. Because everything is bleeding, what this effectively means is that you have to kill 10 enemies every 5 seconds to have infinite Berserking. It's not that hard to kill 10 enemies every 5 seconds. And, you should be able to do that. I think having infinite berserking is just great. It's just always going to be up. It's always going to do more damage. It's always giving you more movement speed. And there's also a couple other nodes that you might want to consider, like damage while berserking. I don't think these guys are that good personally, but it's something to play around with. I think Blood Rage is really, really good though. Once we worked our way up, I also like to quickly grab Craving over here, which does damage to bleeding enemies and damage to elites. It's very, very good. It's a lot of extra damage to elites. And you can see that there's also more damage to elites here. Typically, a lot of builds like to go for Hunter Killer, which is later on in the Weapon Master board. But I like to get this for a little bit more damage to elites. And then you're going to work your way up. And we're going to go for our fourth board here, which is going to be Warbringer. It's a super important board. But we're actually not going to be running Warbringer because, again, I'm trying to run a no Fortify version of this build. If I had like an extra 10 points, maybe I would path and grab this and then, again, spec for Fortify. But I can't afford the points right now. And there's just more important stuff that I'd rather go for. Now we're going to path up and we're going to go for Wrath here, which is going to give us more crit damage as well as more Fury and just get some decks here. These extra ones don't really matter in my opinion right now because they're just not as important as going and grabbing Hungering Fury, as well as more Max Fury, more Fury on kill, more Max Fury, more Fury on kill, and then this one, of course, more Fury on kill. Remember, Max Fury is so damn important, so having the willpower to uh, actually unlock this is going to be very beneficial. Before we leave, we're also going to get Core Reserve, which is again more Max Fury and some bonus Max Life. We don't care that much about the Max Life, but we want to get as much of this Max Fury as possible. We want to make sure we have the willpower so that we can really buff how much Fury we have, even without having it on our gear. And of course, if you wanted to go for Warbringer, you can. It is a defensive option, and I may consider it at like level 100. Now, we're going to go ahead and exit Warbringer. Oh, real quick, before I go on, I think these 4 boards, the Starter, Decimator, Blood Rage, and Warbringer, I think these are like the core to this build. Once you have these 4, I'm pretty sure the build feels relatively online. And so if you are, if you are trying this out, maybe you have Ramaladnis and stuff like that, these 4 boards are like the most important. And you can actually go in like a slightly different order if you wanted. So for example, I could see you starting with this one, and then going to, let's say, Blood Rage so that you can get, this berserking one, and then maybe going to Fortify so you can get your extra Fury and you can get your extra Wrath, and then maybe ending with, Decimator here as well. I just like Decimator early because I think vulnerable damage is so important early, and I think Martial is very, very good early. So, you can try to play around with it, but personally, once you have these 4 boards, I think you're in really good shape. Now, past that, I've been kind of trying to figure out where I want to go and what I want to do. And I think I settled on this guy right here, the Flawless Technique board. We're going to go ahead and path into this and get Ambidextrous. Ambidextrous is the one-handed glyph, and the reason why it's very nice is because this is 8% multiplicative damage, so it's actually adding a lot of damage to our build. You're going to grab Heavy Blows here. I don't quite have the dex for it yet, but this is extra crit damage. Over here, this is damage reduction. I don't have the willpower for it yet, but this is just, again, this is kind of where I'm going further. But this is great. I think the extra damage is very good, and you're also going to be buffing a lot of these blue nodes. When we work our way up, we can also grab Havoc, which is more crit damage. You can see more crit damage, more crit damage. This is really, really good. So I like this board a lot. And now finally, because I'm only level 88 right now, so I still have like, something like over 40 points to go, I would actually work my way up and then end with this guy, Weapon Master. The reason why Weapon Master is really good, and a lot of people are using it, is first off, this glyph socket has a lot of really good blues on it. So something like Martial here is actually pretty good. There's a lot of good powers here as well. Additionally, you can also go and get Hunter Killer, which is still a very good thing. It's giving you damage to elites and also movement speed after killing elites. So, we love that. We love this block. And finally, as like a very late game thing that I would want to try to pick up would actually be Brute, which is some more physical damage, some more attack speed as well. And I already meet the strength requirements. This is actually like a really, like, these nodes are actually, I think, my kind of end game that I would be looking for as I approach level 100. Whew, that's a lot to go through. But this build, man, I'm telling you, this build is so sick. I really do think that this is going to be the new meta. I think that as people start getting, really good Ramaladnis, especially if they're trying to go for like a very speed farming setup. I have no idea how well this does at like Nightmare Dungeon 80 or whatever. But I do think that there is still a lot of potential to get this guy more stacked on defensive stuff. So far, I've just been loving this build. I guess the only thing I didn't talk about was gems. I really like going for green gems because everything is going to be vulnerable so often. This is especially true when you're killing bosses. You can't slow bosses, so just having more damage to vulnerable enemies is great. We're not really running fortified, so I don't think running blue gems is good. I think red gems is just the way. Put red gems in all your gear. It's great. And then armor in your jewelry, of course. But that's it. I mean, the build's sick. Honestly, it's great. I'm really, really loving it. It just feels so much smoother. It really does. Like, nothing I played so far just kind of goes and like, there are some dungeons I've pretty much just pressed Whirlwind one time and that's it. Oh, finally, there's one thing I wanted to talk about. This is just, you might notice that I have Iron Skin on 4 and Wrath the Berserker on 5. I'm so sorry I forgot to mention this. But if you actually go to your gameplay settings, it's over in controls, because it's really annoying pressing Iron Skin when you're also trying to left click. or pick up loot. So what you actually want to do is go to controls, uncheck this one that combines move, interact, basic skill slot. And then what I did is I actually did skill slot 4 and basic skill slot is now skill slot 5. That way I have Wrath of Berserker and Iron Skin on my keys. And then instead you actually bind left click to move and interact. That way you can still force move and you can still pick up items, but you still have all of your you still have all of your abilities on your keybind. So just keep that in mind. This is actually like a huge quality of life thing that, in my opinion, is super necessary for this build to actually work well. Because man, it doesn't feel good without when you're like trying to left click to press Iron Skin. All right, guys, that's it for me. I think this build's really damn sick. I know I said that about Mace, but I think that this is the build I'm gonna probably farm my way to 100 for, because I think it has a long way. I think it can go pretty far, and I'd love to see this at level 100 with like a full Paragon board built. Give it a try, give it a whirlwind, and I'll see you guys in the next video.